Welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. I'm here once again, like we promised, with no other than Kristin Arnold. Kristin, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing, Egberto?
I am doing great. You know, I told you after that next debate that we would be talking again to see if there was any improvement. I read your report and I sat down and I said, you actually seem a tad bit more positive.
Well, it's a stark contrast than what we saw a couple of weeks ago. Thank goodness. But I think the moderator had a couple of points going in her favor. So, you know, the whole notion about the microphones being cut off for the first 2 minutes of each presentation. So if you think about it, that's 4 times 6 segments, that's 24 minutes of a 90-minute, which actually this went 96 minutes debate. Okay, so that went in her favor. I think she also started with a plea to both candidates saying, please, she didn't say it twice. She just said, please, let's one person talk at a time. So there is that. There's the fact that both of them were absolutely skewered a couple of weeks ago in the press. So, you know, they needed to play nice. And lastly, you know, there's only 12. Now it's 11 days till the election. And how many people have already voted?
48 million.
48 million.
Yes.
I've already voted, by the way. Mail-in ballot, I've been doing it since I was 17 and I was in the Coast Guard. So I'm completely familiar with that process.
Well, as a rules analyst, as an expert in interpreting these debates, what grade would you give it?
So I think she did a B, a nice
Wow.
solid B. There's a couple of things that I do have as an issue. You know, the format as prescribed by the commission is 6 segments. Each segment is 15 minutes long. And it was not. Like the first segment was 25 minutes and then the next segment was like 19 minutes. And then the next segment was 17 minutes. She threw in immigration in there, which might have something to do with American families. But if that's the case, then American families was like 22 minutes. So it really wasn't balanced. So by the time she got to leadership, which was supposed to be a 15-minute segment, it was 3. Yay! And she still went 6 minutes over time. So her timing, probably not the greatest, but I think she was good in that she pointed out new information. She tried to keep people focused when people would go off on taxes or corruption or whatever. She's like, here's the topic. Or she would put people on time limits. Like you have 30 more seconds. Not that people really paid attention to it, but you have 10 more seconds. So I think she tried as best as, you know, you're talking to a president and a
former vice president.
I mean, you can't be too much of a horrible person. So I thought she did a pretty solid job.
Now, the last time when I started, I said, how do you like the debate? Your answer was, what debate? So I come back to the same question. How do you like the debate?
So I think that this was more illuminating. I think it was more substantive. I think it was more respectful. I think there was more, she did try to get people to answer questions. She didn't let people off the hook as much because there wasn't the room to obfuscate.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought she did a pretty good job.
Now, what about as far as timing is concerned? Did they get equal time, or how was the distribution of time?
No. Trump got like 4 more minutes. So what she was doing is she was trying to give Biden more time. So she would cut Trump a little bit, but Trump would then interrupt over her to get the last word. So, you know, there was a little bit of back and forth between the two of them. So some people might think that she was deferential to Biden. I don't I don't know if that actually is the case. I'd have to go back and look at the nuances, but I don't think she was.
Now, when it comes to topic selection, was the topics wide enough as far as you're concerned?
I can't really comment on the content.
I know, but the topics
What,
themselves,
what
yeah.
I can comment on is I think that her topics were much less inferential. So let me give you an example. She talked about race in America versus Chris Wallace said race and violence in our cities, which means race and violence go hand in hand in our cities. So there's an implication in there that's less straightforward. So I think she was just saying, like, here's a topic: fighting COVID. We're fighting COVID versus just the virus. American families. Well, families come in all different shapes and sizes, which is why I think maybe immigration was part of her American families. Climate change. So none of them had implications for right or wrong. So I like that. Leadership could have been construed any way that you wanted to. So that was probably the murkiest one.
Well, I like that you noticed that, the difference between Wallace and how she handled it, because, I thought the way Wallace handled it was in my language would be pessimo, horrendous. It was terrible, but who knows? Anyhow, so as the outcome of the debate, there was a winner, there was a loser. Biden turns out to have gotten a large, not only a plurality, but a majority of the votes. Based on what you saw, I know you don't cover content. Do you think that the distinction was good enough to actually declare somebody a winner?
I think the moderator was the winner, Egberto. The
Oh,
moderator came out looking pretty good.
oh, wow. I think I'm going to have to ask you to expand on that.
No, I think she did a very credible job. I mean, here's a woman who most people are not familiar with terribly. She's never done a presidential debate. She's been a sidekick, quite frankly, to Rachel Maddow in a Democratic debate. I think she held her own. I think she was a woman of substance. I think she knew her stuff. She was, she did a very credible job. So I would say, we all walked into this debate going, I really hope this is not a reprise. I just was like, oh, I really,
Yeah.
Who really wanted to see that crap that we saw a couple of weeks ago, right? Nobody wanted to see that. So I think a lot of us were just, I'll speak for myself. I can't speak for anyone else. I was pleasantly surprised at the demeanor of both the candidates. I was pleasantly surprised at the moderation. The skill level was, there were a couple of nuances, and frankly, I'm not exactly sure about the evenness of the questions for the candidate. Those are kind of things that I have to look post debate, because
Not only that, they're subjective.
It's going so fast, and I do think that there's no matter how perfect you are as a moderator, there is some unconscious biases that creep into questions. So I'd probably want to look at that. But
you brought up, that's an interesting subject, and I only have about 3 minutes. So you just brought up unconscious bias. What unconscious bias did you see? Off the top of your head, did you see?
I didn't really see anything quite obvious. I think she was trying to be parallel in the way that she would ask questions. So I'm going to ask you this question. I'm going to ask you a variant of the question, but it's really the same question. But the challenge for any of these debates is, if I ask you a direct question, Egberto, if you don't have the background as a citizen listening in, then I'm not going to understand the context of the answer to that question. So I have to give the audience enough substance in which to ask the question. And therein lies the
since the bias, yeah.
Of it. And when I'm listening, I mean, I'm paying attention to so many other things. It's like I look at the formatting of the questions later to see how evenly matched they are.
Well, as usual, I like the perspective that you give us as far as the structure of the debates. Kristin Arnold, rules. How do you actually say that? A rules analyst, but I think you have another name for that as well. Rules analyst, and what else?
Well, I'm a panel moderator, but in football, you have a rules analyst because
Right.
they're the people who come on after the official has made the call, and they're like going, did they do a good job making the call, or were they? So that's how I came up with rules analyst.
So Kristin Arnold, rules analyst. And the reason I always want to have a rules analyst is because I am a biased watcher of the debates. And I want somebody to tell me if my biases are based on the structure of the debate. And that's why every debate, I want to hear what you have to say.
Shucks, Alberto. Well, it's always a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you so kindly, Christine. You have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel. And number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.